Okay, the last thing that I need to talk about in lesson set 1 is lines and segments. And so far we've been talking about the addition of fractions, and we're going to use that to help us determine certain segment lengths within a given line or a line segment itself. So the first term there is lines. I have a line drawn for you, and a line just continues on in both directions. If you wanted to define a line, it's actually the collection of points. Now, a point is a primitive or undefined term, and that means that we really can't define it. If you think about a point, it's almost like an atom of oxygen in the atmosphere. You can't see it, but when we talk about a point, we can represent it with a dot. Now, if we connect a whole bunch of dots together, you get a curve, but if that curve is straight, we call it a line, and it continues on and on and on. You just keep on connecting these, and that's why the arrows are on the end. Now, if we do not have arrows on the end, and it has two end points, then we refer to it as a segment. So the thing about a segment is that it has two endpoints, a starting and a stopping point. Now, when we talk about a line, if we wanted to name that line, so let's put another line up here, and if I were to draw a line and put some points on it, such as A, M, Y, and if I ask you to name that line, there's multiple ways you can name it. The thing about naming a line is it requires 2 points, any 2 points, just 2 points that are on the line. So I could refer to it as line AM. Don't put Amy down, even though that would be nice, but don't put Amy down, just 2 points. So AM, but I could also reverse them and refer to line MA. But make sure you put the symbol that looks like a line above it, which is a straight line with the 2 arrow tips on it. We could also call it line AY or line YA. All of these are referring to this particular line that I have drawn for you. You could also say it's line MY, or you could call it line YM. So any two of the letters in any order are going to name that line for you. Now, something about a line segment. If I had a line segment, let me put it in black. If I have this line segment here, I'm going to put a point on that line segment, and I'm going to say Amy again. Now, just like you thought before, we can just use 2 points. So you might say that we have AM, but instead of the line, we're going to put a bar above it, and I could say MA. Switch the letters around. Maybe somebody else, you want to call it AY, and switch the letters YA. Notice no arrow tips because it is not a line, so we don't need to put the arrow tips there. And the last thing, MY and YM. Now, I did these in different colors for a reason. If we talk about line segment AM, line segment AM actually starts at A and ends at M. And if I talk about, that's also the same thing as line segment MA. So both of these right here only represent this distance from A to M. So AY is making reference from A all the way over to Y. So the middle two in red are actually representing the full line segment that we have. And MY or YM is just referring to this last segment right there. So we could name it 3 different ways, but that's actually referring to 6 different ways. But that's the difference is going to be which actual segment are you talking about? Are you talking about the full segment? Are you talking about just the part AM? or are you talking about just the part my? So in the naming of it, you name it using the two endpoints. You have to use the endpoints of the segment in order to name that particular line segment. So I know which one you were making reference to. Okay, the other thing that can happen with line segments, a line does not have any length. There's no way it can have a length because the arrow tips on it mean that it's going to continue on forever. So if I keep on going, I can't say that it's going to be 5 miles because you just keep on going. So when we look at a particular segment, I might say that my is 4 units. The only time you can write a line segment without the bar over it is if you are referring to the length and I say my is equal to 4 or 4 units. Now the bar does not have to be over it because that means I know I am referring to the measure or the length of that particular segment. And that's what we want to get into next. We want to be able to figure out what is the length of a segment given other pieces of segments. So let's look at an example. Okay, so an example of applying this information. If I were to give you the following information that's listed here on the page. I have a line segment, and if I tell you AC, segment AC measures 10 1/4 units, segment AB measures 4 3/7 units, I want to find BC. So let's just go through and first fill in information that we know. So it says that segment AC measures 10 1/4 units. So all the way from A clear down to C has a length of 10 1/4 units. Now the next thing that they tell you is that AB measures 4 3/7 units. Sorry, that moved up just a little bit. So AB, if I go from A over to B, that measures 4 3/7 units long. And I still wrote up higher. Sorry, I look at my paper. So it's 4 3/7 units. So the question is, what is the length of BC? So I want to know from B all the way over to C, what is this length right there? So if I look at the green and red are 2 pieces. So I know that AB, this length right here, measures 4 3/7, and I want to know what is BC, but when I add the 2 together, I get this length of 10 1/4 units. So if I want to find a part, I'm going to have to use subtraction. So I'm going to take 10 1/4 units, and I am going to subtract from it 4 3/7. So to subtract, we're going to get that common denominator. The common denominator, the least common multiple between 4 and 7 is 28. I'm going to run out of a little bit of room here, so I got to write kind of small because I didn't write my numbers very well. So it's 28. If we look at that, you have to take 7 times 4 to get 28. So I need to take 3 times 4 to give me 12. 4 times 7 is 28. So 1 times 7 is 7. And now we run into that problem that we've talked about before in the last lesson that we talked about. We want to subtract, and I cannot take 7 and subtract 12 from it. So what we have to do, remember, is we have to borrow. We're going to take one whole piece and we're going to cut it into parts. So I'm going to bring over this whole, and now I have this right here, and my fraction bar extends, but now I brought over a whole, and I want to cut it into this 28 pieces or change that into an improper fraction. So you're going to take 28 times the whole. So 28, if I take the whole and split it into those pieces, I'm going to have 28 of them. That's why you multiply these together. And then I add 7. So 28 times 1 is 28. plus 7 is going to give you 35. So when I borrow, I get 35 over 28. And I want to subtract 12 28ths from that. So 35 minus 12, 5 minus 2 is 3, 3 minus 1 is 2. So we end up with 23 over 28. Now, don't stop there. You still have the whole parts that you need to deal with. So 9 minus 4 is 5. And units, we got a label. It's that many units long. And that happens to be the measure of BC. So if I go back and I look at my diagram, if this BC happens to have a value of 5 and 23 28ths, 23, hopefully you can read that, 23 28ths. If you add those two segments together, you should get 10 1/4. So you could check yourself if you wanted to. I know most of you are confident in your addition or subtraction, so you probably would not do that. But anyway, BC does end up being 5 and 23 28ths long. Notice I didn't put the bar over it because I am referring to measure. Okay, you have 3 problems in your homework assignment. Sometimes they may give you the green and the red, and they ask you to find the full length. If that's the case, you would add the two together. But if you're given the total and you want to find just a part, either the red part or the green part, you're going to subtract the values to find that. So what I'm going to need you to do is I want you to do 28, 29, and 30. Now I know I only gave you one example, but I want you to try it and let me know how that goes. I want to see how well you can do with that. If you have any questions, make sure you send me a message.